Welcome to the Ashes to Beauty, the Divorce Life podcast. I am your host, Stephanie Marie Laswell, divorce coach specializing in finance and real estate at Stephanie Marie Living. In this podcast, we will take a look at what it looks like to live through divorce, the good, the bad, and the ugly, a peek into individual stories as their ashes from divorce over time are transformed into beauty. Hello, and welcome to the Ashes to Beauty, the Divorce Life podcast. I am your host, Stephanie Laswell, and we are here today with my special friend, Blythe. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Stephanie.
I'm so excited to catch up with you. It's been so long.
I know.
And you get to tell our listeners about how your life has turned so beautiful now.
Oh, it's wonderful. Yes.
Yeah.
And thanks for having me on. I love getting to share my story.
Yeah, awesome. So let's just jump right in.
Okay, perfect.
Let's start with the ashes. So you have gone through a divorce.
Yes.
And how long ago was that divorce file?
That was 11 and a half years ago now.
Okay. Yeah.
So it feels like another lifetime ago. My kids are completely different humans than they were at that point.
Yeah.
And at that time, we had moved to Oklahoma. We'd been here for a little over a year, maybe a year and a half. And we moved here so that we could be near my ex-husband's family.
Oh.
And I was a stay-at-home mom, happily raising at that point, a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And he left because he wanted to marry one of our neighbors.
Wow.
And I went through this moment of, oh my gosh, I don't know this wasn't the plan.
Yeah.
This was not where I thought we were going to go.
Yeah.
So it kind of came out of left field, ended up being a huge blessing even through all of it, but definitely really, really painful and not expected. I learned a lot.
As you do.
Yes.
You're kind of forced to, right?
Yes. I heard you can either use your past as a, as a sofa or as a springboard, and you can let it launch you forward. And I decided very quickly that I was not willing to give up my time with my kids, raising them the way that I wanted them to be raised. I wasn't willing to compromise on my motherhood. That was the thing that was most important to me, which, in hindsight, maybe my motherhood shouldn't have been the only thing that was important to me. Maybe that was a contributing factor to the marriage ending. But so I kind of jumped into this fiercely protective mode right away and went, I'm fine. I've got this, and I have so got this, and I'm going to be the best single mom in the universe, and my kids will not miss a thing or suffer a day because of this. And that's exhausting.
Yes, it is.
And not possible. So I didn't really allow myself to grieve for the first probably 1.5 years, 2 years or so.
It was just pulled up those boots by their strap and just hit the ground running.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's, I was very, very focused on the kids, which I think when you've got young kids and you go through a divorce, I think that's natural to some extent. I know everybody handles divorce a little bit differently, but for me, I was fierce determination. I was like, I will not fail at this.
Yeah.
So I bought a business, and I would do things like get up at 2 a.m. when I couldn't sleep and scrub the baseboards in the closets and all sorts of really wonderfully healthy things. Sometimes I wish I still had a little bit of that rage left because I was a lot more effective. It was like a superpower I could tap into, and I had all this energy, and it was rage and hurt. And really looking back now, my pride was hurt because I didn't know that I knew we had some problems in the marriage, because I don't think you can get to the point where somebody leaves and you're like, what? I had no idea.
Yeah.
But I didn't think we were at that point because we had been through counseling. This was the third person he had been talking to or seeing kind of outside of the marriage. And so at this point, I was ready for just moving forward and, okay, we're going to work on this again. And it was actually a relief when he said, I don't want to work on it anymore.
Yeah.
Even though it really hurt.
Right. But it was the door that you needed someone to close.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
We needed somebody to, I probably would not have made the decision on my own. I would have continued to try and fight, because in my mind, that's what you do.
Right.
You fight for your marriage, and that's what you know, in quotes, should do, is fight for it. And it doesn't necessarily, that's not always possible, and it's not always the best situation.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things that can be really hurting and confusing about divorce, is a lot of people just assume that you're giving up or that it's the easy way out.
Right.
And in my experience and from the people I've met, there's no easy divorce.
No.
It's not. Even if you are on the best of terms with your ex, even if you both really want this and you feel like you've just grown apart, I think there are still hurt feelings on either side.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot to navigate through.
Yeah. There's still a recovery. There's still the uncoupling.
Yes.
If there's children involved, there's, okay, now we've got to move to this new stage of co-parenting. So there's a lot of adjustments. And if you don't take the time to stop and mourn, then you can certainly cause even more problems for yourself.
Right. Then it pops up like 2 or 3 years later. You're like, what is my problem?
Yeah.
This is, I'm supposed to be fine.
Yeah.
And it actually, like, it made me physically ill to the point where I had 6 kidney stones.
Wow.
I was, my work life was really stressful. Owning a business is stressful on its own, but owning a business and being a single mom, and I just felt this pressure to have to do everything and do everything perfectly. And it turns out I'm human, which was really frustrating.
Wait, what?
So it was hard to go through that later. And it was hard to explain even, to like my therapist and to my mom and my best friend, that it's not so much that I missed the husband. Sorry, that's what I call him, the husband. It wasn't so much that I missed him or that it was anything to do with feelings I still had for him or anything. It was more, I needed time to mourn and grieve the life that I thought I was going to have. And I thought I could just gloss right over that by making it look from the outside like the life I thought I was going to have.
Right. Yeah.
And turns out that doesn't work.
Yeah.
And it was really shocking to me and upsetting to me to realize that you can't escape this pain.
Right.
You're going to have to go through it at some point.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing that I probably can relate to as well, is not having that guidance to, obviously it's clear like you're letting go of the person, but also to like, okay, I can't have this life right now.
Right.
Maybe it comes later. But at this point in time, as I'm uncoupling, as I'm trying to figure out what it looks like to be a single mom and a co-parent and all of the things, I can't keep trying to force myself to make it look this way or feel this way or have these things, because it just simply,
because life is different.
Yeah.
And no matter how much I, dress us in our matching T-shirts and attend every single thing, and I'm the room mom, and I'm, I bake the perfect cookies, and my kids' birthday parties are always insane, and things like that. It doesn't make up for the fact that I'm not a stay-at-home mom, which is what I thought I was wanting to do, and I'm not. We moved here so that we could be near family, and my family is all 16 hours away, and kind of overnight, I went from being part of a family here to not having that, and being, 5 hours away from all of my college best friends, not really having roots here and knowing anybody yet, and being really far away from my family. And it was pretty lonely.
Yeah. How did you deal with that? Like isolation because of distance, not so much because you wanted it, but it does play a big part in how you get support from people that are closest to you. How did you kind of figure out where to get your support system, or did you even have one while you're going through it?
I was very, very fortunate that my family and I are super close, and even over the phone, it still was a good support system for me. My kids and I would sneak up to Kansas, which is where we moved here from. So all of my best friends from college were up in Kansas. So we would sneak up there for weekends, or they would come down and visit. One of my best friends was in Tulsa, and so she came to town every Friday. And it was really good to just have that consistency of knowing that every Friday I get to see Shelly, and I know if I can just hang on till then, it's going to be fine. I had fantastic neighbors who kind of stepped into the role of my family. And one of them, would pick Nathan up every day. My now 13-year-old, would pick him up every day after school once he was in pre-K, and watch him for the afternoon so I could work.
That's awesome.
And she did all of the mom things that I wanted him to experience. And I also had to accept the fact that it's okay for him to get those experiences with someone else. Because I really wanted to be the one who's taking him to the history museum and reading him the stories and scratching his back for nap time and all of that. But at some point I had to look at it and go, it's more important to me that he is cared for at that level than it is that I'm the one to do it.
Right.
And it was probably good for me as a parent to have to let go of some of the control that I had previously clung to, because I definitely had very strong ideas on how I wanted my kids raised. And everybody wants to be the best mom they can to their kids. Yeah. Nobody is like, it's all right. It's fine. I've got more than one.
They're resilient.
Right?
They'll be fine.
So there was some of having to kind of come to terms with that too. And really, I learned, I grew a lot in my confidence. And I learned to ask for help, which was huge, because I would never have done that before in a million years.
Experience.
Very humbling. Yeah. And that's the day that I had 6 kidney stones when it hit me and my then boyfriend at the time, who I was planning to marry, we had just broken up while I had 6 kidney stones. And all of a sudden I was feeling just devastated. And I realized it's not really because of him and the relationship that just ended. It was more because I was upset at the life that I thought I was getting when I was married. And I thought, okay, we can kind of patch this together with him and it'll be close. Which, who wants a life that's like, well, it's close enough to what I wanted. It's fine. That's not the life that I deserve. That's not the life my kids deserve.
Right.
But I literally had to ask for help, because I could not drive myself to the hospital at that point. I could not watch my children and go have surgery. like that's not a thing. They don't let you bring your kids in if they're putting you under.
You don't have a daycare here.
Right. So it was very humbling to ask for help. And I had a lot of friends who were really beautiful in my life at that time, who were really a gift in that they would step in, and they knew me well enough to go, I'm bringing dinner. Do you want this or this? Or I'm coming over and I'm going to bring a movie for the kids, and we're going to sit and, I'll do the dishes while you just sit there and recover. And that way you have help. So that was phenomenal. And if you have a friend who's going through anything, don't expect them to reach out, would be the advice I would give. Right. Because I think it's really easy to go, well, I'm here if you need me. Because that's the token offer that we all make, right? I make it still. I'm sorry, guys. But being the friend who's willing to show up and go, I'm here and we're going to get through this. And even if it's just something as simple as, I left a gallon of milk on your porch because I know you said you forgot to stop and get some. Or anything like that really helped kind of carry me through that time.
Those little gestures can go a long way.
Right.
Especially when you're not thinking clearly.
Right.
There's brain fog, there's overwhelm, there's exhaustion.
Right.
And for somebody just to be able to look in and recognize, this is something that I see missing. This is a little thing that I can do to help. It can be a huge boost.
Right.
And help you realize that you are loved and you're seen. And that there are people there that care when they do those little things. And I would totally agree with you. Don't wait
right
for them to come to you. Just step up to the plate.
Right.
Yeah.
Because most of the time, but be willing to give them their space too. That's the other side of it. I wouldn't say bully your way in and be like, I am here and we're getting through this. And you're like, awesome. I was going to take a bath and go to bed.
Yeah.
I don't need company right now. But I think being willing to just step into that and being willing to sit in their mess and their discomfort together, because I know a lot of women, especially, and I'm sure men too, feel very isolated and very, very much like everyone's going to see how messy I am. Everyone's
Right.
going to see, whether it's the physical mess of like, hey, my toddler just spilled pretzels on the floor, and I'm hoping that either they will get stepped on enough I can vacuum them up, or the dog will eat them.
Right.
Like, that's because I have no intention of getting up and taking care of it right now. Or, the emotional mess of like, today I'm just snotty and can't quit crying.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, sorry, I can't pull it together.
Yeah.
And I think there's something really empowering and beautiful about being able to just live and accept yourself in that mess.
Mm-hmm.
And also being able to step into somebody else's mess and go, I can't make it stop hurting, but I can make sure that your kids have clean underwear.
Yeah.
So that's how I can help out right now.
Right.
Because everybody, it's not just people who've gone through the divorce. Everybody has a time in their life that's challenging. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't had it yet, it's coming. And I'm sorry.
Yes.
But I think humanity is messy. Being a human in general and existing is messy. Right. And so being willing to be honest about that, it's also freeing, because then you have people who feel comfortable letting their guard down with you and going, you know what, I'm a mess too. And I also don't have it together. And I think there are more of us out there like that, especially in the post-divorce community.
Right.
And that's kind of a big thing that God has laid on my heart, is to share that aspect of it with people, because you are a mess after this. It's just, and that's one of the stages. There are certain stages that I think you go through as you heal through divorce. And I think just taking ownership of it really kind of removes some of the scary from it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what advice would you give for somebody that is considering going through a divorce?
I always start this question because once I went through my divorce, I sort of became like the poster child for my friends who were unhappy in their marriages. And I had a lot of friends reaching out, and they're like, your life looks so great right now. And so I'm thinking about getting a divorce. And my first advice is always, don't jump into it. Make sure that you feel comfortable, that you've done everything you can to save the marriage. Because at the end of the day, you have to live with your decision. And if you're going to look back 5 years from now and go, well, it was really stupid that I did that because I still love him and I was just upset that, he bought a new car without asking me, or, whatever. Like, not that that's not a good reason. It's fine, whatever your reasons are. But make sure that you are comfortable with yourself in that decision, and that you can look at it and go, I have done everything I could to improve myself and to improve my marriage to the point where we really gave it a shot, and it's just not going to work. That would be my biggest takeaway, I guess. Yeah. And know that it's really just trading one set of hard for another. It's not the easy way out. I tend to be a fairly joyful person, regardless of my circumstances. So even if I'm smiling at you and I'm generally happy and bubbly on the surface, because that's sincerely who I am, it's not because, I'm so happy that I get to be a single mom and figure this out and not be, there have been times when I'm like, I'm having a great day, except, the electricity is going to be cut off tomorrow if I don't do that. And we still need groceries. So, so be realistic about it. Know that just because it looks good, like I would be happy if I were still married. Well, and I'm now remarried and I'm happy there. Yes. But don't look at somebody else's circumstance and go, they seem really good where they are. And just assume that, getting the divorce is like taking that magic pill and everything's great. Right. Because that's not reality.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of things to relearn.
Right.
Or learn for the first time.
Right. And you grow in so many ways you're not expecting, and learn so much stuff about yourself. I think that sometimes it's really painful and not flattering.
Yeah.
Yes. That you have to be willing and ready to grow. And I do think my divorce has been one of the best things that's ever happened to me. 10 years ago, if you had told me that, I wouldn't have been able to use words that were very nice about that. Yes. I'd have been like, well, great. Screw you. We're done.
Yeah, it does. It takes a lot of inner work, whether you're in a marriage or not.
Right.
Like this life journey is just about inner work. and accepting that you are perfectly imperfect.
Mm-hmm.
And yet there is still always room for us to improve and grow, and how much our childhood affects what we bring into the marriage, and how we can go years with not even being aware of that. So it's just this big, long healing and growth journey, healing and growth. Like, that is the cycle, right?
Right.
That's the one cycle we can know is going to be consistent in this world.
And you come into a marriage with both of you having your own baggage.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a lot of work on yourself and a lot of grace for your partner, and a lot of willingness to look at what you are bringing in and what your ideals of marriage are.
Yeah.
Whether it's because your parents had an amazing marriage or were horrible and couldn't be in the same room. You know, I think people come at it from both sides, and it can be really freeing to go through that baggage, and it can bring you closer to a person, but you have to be willing to do the work. And if one of you is willing to go through the garbage and the other one is not, sometimes it does mean that divorce is inevitable.
Right.
Because I think if you don't grow together, then you do grow apart.
Absolutely. That's what I totally believe, that you have to be consistently individually growing and then growing as a couple, because when either one of those stops, it stops everything.
Right.
That the whole thing stops and can crumble, especially if you don't address it quickly. Because then it just takes so much more time and energy and effort to rebound from it, or you might not even rebound from it.
Right.
So, yeah, definitely. So what about somebody that has just gone through a divorce? Like, what does that look like? So that the papers are finalized, the stamp has been stamped by the judge.
The ink is drying.
Yeah, and this whole new world is starting to open up. What advice do you give for somebody that's just finalized their divorce?
It's a little bit surreal, and just be okay with that. That there's no right or wrong reaction to this. Some people feel relief at it, I think. Some people feel overwhelmingly sad and start grieving right away. Some people have already grieved and, it's taken them 6 years to draw out the paperwork, and they're just like, oh my gosh, thank you, Lord, that I'm done. Like, that was a whole headache. And I think don't have any expectation on yourself. Be really nice to yourself. This is a season where you should be kind to yourself. And if you don't know who you are and what you like, take this time now to figure it out. Yes. And really dive into that and spend some time with yourself, which can be really uncomfortable at first. The other thing, for me, the hardest part of getting a divorce was getting out of the parking lot. Because my attorney and I walked right in. My ex didn't show up. The attorney had arranged it with the judge so that we got to go into the chambers beforehand. So it was like not even an issue for us. And then we walked up to the, whatever, the fourth floor or whatever it is where they stamped our thing. And they were like, okay, you're divorced. And I was like, cool. That should have been harder to me. Like this whole, that was all it took was just the months and months and months of fighting and battling. And, I want this. We needed to say this document, you have to sign this document. You have to agree to this. And then all of a sudden it's over. You're like, really? That was it. And really getting out of the parking garage was the hardest part to me, because I kept getting turned around. I'm like, I guess I live here now. This is it.
I'm never leaving.
Right. So I think being willing to show yourself grace and give yourself the time that you need. I wouldn't recommend, having a meeting at 11 o'clock that morning if your divorce hearing was at 9. I think taking that day or maybe even a week, and I think it's different if you have kids versus if you don't. For me, I made sure that that I had somebody who was on for my kids. My sister wasn't there at that time, but I made sure that I had somebody on for the kids so that they were somewhere safe. And I went back home and I just kind of sat on my couch like, what do I do now? Like, that was, okay, well, that ended. And it was very surreal to me. And I don't think there's any way to know how you're going to feel. It's sort of like when you have kids. You have no idea what it's like to be a parent until you've done it. Mm-hmm. You have no idea how hard marriage is until you've done it. You have no idea how hard divorce is until you've done it. And it's different for everyone.
Right.
So just give yourself space.
Yeah.
Would be my biggest. And know that where you are right now and all the emotions you're feeling right now are not going to be where you stay forever.
Right.
That there will be, for better or for worse, you're in this alone now. And there are going to be good things that you find about that and hard things that you find about that.
What about dating post-divorce?
Don't. I'm just kidding. I think dating should be entered into carefully, or you will tend to repeat the same mistakes that you made in your first relationship. I think a lot of people feel like I'm nothing if I don't have somebody. Mm-hmm. They feel like their identity is in that relationship. Right. And I made that mistake too. So I'm not saying that from a place of judgment. I'm saying it from a place of I've been there and I know how much that hurts. Mm-hmm. Because then when that ends, because I chose somebody, my next serious relationship was somebody who was very much like my ex. But didn't have some of the same good qualities that my ex had in terms of the way he would treat the kids and things like that. Like he was just not a very nice person a lot of the time. And I didn't see it because I thought, well, finally, he's Catholic, which is what I am. And so obviously that's, Catholic and age appropriate are the two things I was looking for. And I would also say to people whose friends have just gone through a divorce, don't try and fix them up right away unless it's somebody that you really know, like this person is special and would be a good fit. I went through the That's Not My Boyfriend series of dating. There's children's books called That's Not My Truck. That's too shiny. That's not my truck. That's too, its wheels are too big. And that's sort of how I felt when I started dating, because all of my friends, even before my divorce was final, I had friends who were like, oh, I need you to meet this man. He's also single. Like, what else can you tell me about him? Well, he's around your age. I'm like, okay, I'm looking like my standards are a little higher than also single and age appropriate. Right. Like, does he have a personality? Does he have a job? When, interested in the same things, anything like that. And there were a lot of people who, like, my singleness was uncomfortable to them more than it was to me. Yeah. And I think if you continue to try to fix somebody up, like, oh, no, you need this person, it kind of reinforces the message that you're not worthy if you're not in a relationship. Right. And I think that's, quite honestly, a load of crap. So, sorry.
Yeah. Well, it is interesting how that shift happens. Like how the shift of people treating you changes after you go from married to single. And it's always baffled me. I mean, half of us are walking around right. in this situation, and it's almost like we still don't even know what to do with it. And so what do you think about that? Like, how can we bring dignity to the divorcee?
Realize that they are still the same person that they were. They're going through some growth, so they're not going to be the same person that they were forever, that you met way back when necessarily. But give them room for growth. And don't exclude them just because, well, this is a couples thing. Right. Okay, well, I tend to be family oriented. I'm more comfortable in my mom's group from church with their husbands than I am at a bar, with singles night. That's my comfort zone. I would rather watch your kids play on the water slide and, go to a family barbecue. Don't exclude me just because now I'm single and that's taboo. Yeah. It doesn't, my kids still deserve to grow up around other kids their age. And honestly, I feel like this was an area where the church failed me quite a bit because there was not support for divorcees. And there was not a group that was ready and willing to welcome you. I was very lucky to have good friends who did still include me to a point. But if their husbands were the ones who were planning all the activities, which tended to be the way it went in my circle of friends, all the husbands would be hanging out, on their golf carts in the morning and then be planning what we're doing for the rest of the day. Well, they don't think about me because I'm not there, and I don't have a male counterpart who's there.
Yeah.
And so just be intentional about inviting them and still including them. Realize that it may be even more important to be intentional about inviting them because your marriage may be the only healthy marriage that their kids get to see at this point. Yeah. And so that can be a public service that you can offer even. Don't just drop them just because something changes in their life.
Right.
And I know it can be awkward if you were friends with both of them. But I think even just having the conversation and going, hey, my relationship with you is still important to me. I want to honor your level of comfort. If your ex is going to be here, do you want me to still invite you or not? Like, where are we on that? Because I think that changes too. My ex-husband and I now, can go to dinner with our kids and it's not weird. For the first 7 or 8 years after the divorce, it would have been really weird. Like, now we can sit together at their sporting events and things and it's okay. Right afterwards, I might have ended up in jail. So I think being intentional about still including both sets of them. I had one friend who made it clear that she was choosing my ex's side because he was friends with her husband. And I was like, but we met your husband through you and I, because I've known you since our freshman year of college. And that's just the choice she made. And it took me a while to get over that. That felt more almost more betraying than my husband having an affair.
Yeah.
Because I felt but you knew me and you still chose him. But what I realized is the people who don't stick around, they're not your people.
Right. Yeah.
And when I look at their lives now, I wouldn't want to be doing what they're doing. So it's okay. And that's the other thing I would tell newly divorced people. The people who fade out of your life, it's okay. They were there for the season that you needed them. And there will be new people who come in and kind of fill that role in your new season.
And that's kind of that's something else you have to mourn that you don't think about. There's so many layers to this mourning of, well, I'm mourning this marriage ending. I'm mourning what I thought life was going to look like. I'm mourning a second family that I had become part of. I'm mourning friendships. So it just continues to layer and layer. Right. One on top of each other, which is something that I wasn't prepared for.
And it's a shock, I think.
Yeah.
Because and I think there gets to be a point at the end of a marriage where you're like, I just want this to be done.
Yeah.
And you're like, it will be so much better. And then you get out and you're like, it's not so much better.
Yeah.
Why does this hurt?
Yeah.
That's not what I signed up for.
Why do these hurts come back years later?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's hard. And I think the more that we talk about that with people, the more we can kind of change that. And people who are going through divorce now will have resources, will know I'm not alone. The next stage of this is my friends are all going to set me up with awkward and weird people. That's
what I can expect.
One of the things that happens. And just normalizing it.
Yeah.
Because people have been getting divorced for, gosh, I don't even know how long, I know in the 40s it was taboo.
Right.
But since then, it's become more and more prevalent. And I think it's easy to look at a marriage from the outside and go, well, they just didn't work hard at it or whatever. And I think once you have been through it or had a good friend go through it, hopefully people will be a little bit more able to understand that it's something that is hard and heartbreaking and changes you forever and changes your kids forever. And it not always in bad ways.
Right.
But you have to take the good with the bad. And really, it depends on where you put your focus. I know a lot of one of the first nights I ever went out with a group of women who were divorced, they sat around and all they wanted to do was check out all the guys, drink so many drinks, and then bash their exes. And I went, I'm intentionally choosing not to handle this that way because I know that's just going to hold me in a place where I'm really bitter.
Right.
And I don't want to be bitter about this. I want to get through it. I don't want to cling to it. So I think educating people on that and knowing that it's okay if that's how you do handle it. There's a space for that, but figure out what's best for you and what's going to keep you moving forward in a positive direction.
And not staying stuck.
Right.
Yeah.
Because if you cling to that bitterness, it'll take over every aspect of your life.
Right.
And who wants to live like that?
Yeah.
I don't.
It takes a lot of energy.
Yes. And I don't want that.
Right.
And I don't want that example set for my kids. I want them to see that you can come through hard things and you can grow. I want them to see resiliency. And just the bare facts of it is, especially if you were married to, if the person that you divorced was their dad, they're half his DNA. So if you spend the whole time talking about what a loser he is, you're sending that message to your kids.
Yeah.
That's not good.
You want them to take that on.
No.
What's one thing that you want to leave with our listeners before we go?
If you're going through a divorce, you're going to be okay. You will grow. And there are support groups out there. There are a lot of resources out there. So don't be afraid to reach out and don't be afraid to accept help when you have friends who do show up.
For sure. Yes. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course. Thank you for having me. This was great. Yes.
Thank you, listeners, for tuning in, and we will check in with you next time on Ashes to Beauty, The Divorce Life. Bye. For more information about services provided by myself, you can find me at Stephanie Marie Living on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you for tuning in today, and to our producer, Jazz, at Possibilities Podcast Center.